Hey, and welcome back. My name is Angie, and today we learn all about being fearless. Nick, also known as Mnys, is today's guest, and he shares exactly how starting from the bottom has shaped his journey to rising to the top. Music is often about us, but in Nick's case, it can also be about those around us as he demonstrates to us with his ability to share other people's stories through the art. The music industry requires not just one skill, it requires many, including the courage to reach out and keep trying again and again, despite knowing that you may not always succeed, which, by the way, the idea of trying again and again, when do you rest in between those moments? Rest is really important, and when we get into momentum, rest isn't usually the first thing on our minds, although it should be. You can find his music on all streaming platforms by searching his name, Mnys. Enjoy!
Hello.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, Nick. So first of all, Mnys. I mean, that's like surface level. I would love to find out why you go by Mnys. Where did that name come from? Is it an acronym? What is it?
Yeah, so it is an acronym. Years ago, I had a MySpace pop acoustic project called My New York Summer. And, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just kind of learning how to record and like trying to make friends with bands and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of tabled it when I started writing and producing for other people. And then really just 2 years ago when I launched the project, I had no intentions for anything really. And I was like, I'm just going to use the acronym MNYS just to sort of pay homage to myself. So that's kind of where it comes from.
Oh my God, that's really cool. So why did you decide to, produce and work for other people rather than plunging into creating your own music for yourself and putting that out?
Well, I felt like I was able to add value in other ways. At the time, I was working as like a graphic designer. I was doing lyric videos for a ton of bands. And I just felt like I never really knew what I wanted to say. I was just kind of making songs just to make them. But channeling someone else's story has always been so, like, I've been very passionate about just like being able to like convey or communicate what someone else wants to say through their music. And I did that. And that was really fun. I still do that. And I will never not do that. But then there comes the other end of it where it's like, sometimes you're in sessions and not everyone necessarily wants to say anything meaningful. They just kind of want to hang out. And that's where the artist project came back to life.
Damn, that's really interesting, wanting to communicate other people's thoughts. I mean, I feel like in music, we always hear artists talking about how they're trying to express their own thoughts and put that into paper, put that into music. But to have the desire to, help other people put their thoughts into words, into lyrics, into music, that's really interesting. I don't think I've actually heard that take done before. So that's really cool. Good on you.
Thanks.
So do you prefer working with other people then, or do you prefer being a soloist?
I think it's mixed. I think for anything creative, collaboration is always at the top of the list of, I feel like what people should be doing, because that's what the best, that's what best will come out of it, I guess. But yeah, for my stuff, it's mostly been my personal story. It's all of that is only my personal story. And then when it comes to other people, it just depends on where they're trying to go. Everyone has their limitations within production. Like, I'm not the best guitarist in the world. Sometimes bring someone else in. Sometimes, I'm not fit for a specific genre, let's say, like hip hop per se. Like, I'm not going to be the one spitting bars. So I'll take a back seat on that, maybe just hop on the computer, do more production stuff. And I don't know, it's like a very loose sort of way of thinking, I think, when I'm just creating.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting that we live in an era where, we can rely so much on our computers to create music and to create art. And I know a lot of artists, they know instruments beforehand. I know you know a few instruments, like you said, but knowing that production comes a lot from the laptop, do you think it's possible to evolve as an artist only knowing how to produce with your laptop?
Yes, I think that's something I kind of been thinking about too, where there's a whole new subset of music that is coming out. Obviously, the hyperpop stuff, it's a very general word to say at this point, but seen kids literally 17, 18 years old just throw on the laptop, straight up microphone, sing into the into auto tune. And I don't know, I think anyone who's like cultivating a community and people are clearly resonating with it, then it's inevitable that to say like, oh, this, like, one of my biggest pet peeves is like when someone is like, that song sucks or that artist sucks. If something clearly is resonating for a group of people, you can't just negate that, you know?
Yes, that's honestly, I feel you so hard on that pet peeve because it's one of my biggest pet peeves. And honestly, I work with a lot of artists. I work in the music industry, and I do hear it on a daily basis where other musicians will put down other musicians and they'll say, that's a crappy song, or their vocals are bad, or that lyric is bad or whatever. But like, music is so subjective. Maybe it's not your thing. That's totally fine. Like I don't really, sometimes I don't really listen to all genres of music. I do appreciate all of them, but like to
Right.
say that, a specific genre, specific song or artist is blanket statement bad, that's so mean. Like, I don't think anyone wants to hear that about themselves because it's so subjective.
100%. 100%. I think that's something that I definitely, when I was younger, would kind of think, I think coming from the pop punk scene specifically too, there's like this such a elitist way of thinking of what pop, especially now how the resurgence has come, and like, just it's funny to kind of take a step back and see how bands sort of like deal with like the newer stuff that's coming up. And like you said, it's like there are kids that have never heard any of these legacy bands ever, and they're growing up on the MGKs, and that's what, like, it's going to be interesting to see in the next 10 years what's going to what their music is going to sound like growing up on that, like the current thing. I don't know, it's very, I'm just always like,
I totally agree. Like, I honestly, it's come to a point where sometimes like I almost feel like, I love pop punk. Oh my God, I say this too often. My favorite artist, Youngblood, Machine Gun Kelly. Like, I do love all of these artists so much. I love old pop punk as well. So like, to sit in a group of people where they're like, oh, like the new stuff sucks, it's not the same anymore. Well, like, I mean, I guess that's your opinion and all, but music is changing, music is evolving, everything is constantly changing and evolving. And if it's not, then eventually it'll be stagnant and it's not going to be as legendary anymore. It's not going to be as great anymore. So to sit here and say the new stuff is shitty, I mean, that's shitty.
100%. I totally agree. Like, I think, again, like anyone crushing it, I'm just a fan of. I think, and if they're, I've said if they're a nice person, that's like key.
Yes, I agree. And, going into the music industry, it's really hit or miss. 50% of the people I meet are like so nice, so willing to help. They want to see other people succeed. And then you meet other people who I think are a little bit lost, and they don't want that same success for other people, and they'll put other people down. They'll comment crappy things on their TikToks and their Instagrams. And it's like, I think that the arts industry, the music community is such a free space. It's like you can be whoever you want in it. That's the beauty of art. There's no universal formula. There's no one way to get somewhere. You don't have to be anyone to be successful. You just have to be yourself. Right. And give the space to other people to be themselves, and, be nice about it. Don't put other people down for the sake of lifting yourself up. But I think that it is a challenging industry, and it's really easy to lose yourself. So in the moments where you have to keep defending yourself, and again, like being an artist, the more successful, quote unquote, you get, the less of a human you become, the more defensive you become. And honestly, a lot of the times, because you're so defensive and you have a shield up, the meaner you might seem because you're trying to defend yourself. That's a scary part about the arts community.
You hit it right on the head. Like you said, the being yourself. I think a lot of people have that shield up, and they think that, or they try to put other people down in the idea that they're putting themselves up, but reality, pushing themselves down and blocking out, sabotaging their own like opportunities that can happen. It's also like just an imaginary game, like the music, the arts game, right? Everyone thinks like there's like this hierarchy of networking you have to do or something like that. But the reality is, like, if you just if you don't compare yourself to any of that kind of stuff, because most of it is smoke and mirrors, then you understand that everyone is this, like, literally, and they're all going through their own things, and they're all like, I always say it's like, if you're jealous or you're envious of someone else's life, you have to be willing to change every part of your life for their life, and then understand whether or not you're still jealous, right? Because you can't just take the highlight reel and be like, oh, I need, like, it's like, no, it's not how life is.
And especially in like such an age of social media, I mean, we hear it all the time. It's such a cliche. Not everything you see is real, Photoshop, editing, whatever. Like, that's not the reality. You don't really ever know someone, but it's true. You never really know someone. You don't know what it takes to get to where they are. So, I mean, I do understand jealousy and envy. That's a very, very common feeling. I'd be lying if I said I never felt it myself. Of course, I felt jealous and envious. That being said, I remember talking to this one person who said, they don't want to leave their job and work a better job because they don't want to be around more successful people because it would make them feel shitty about themselves. And like, that's an interesting mindset, because I feel like when you are starting to experience feelings of jealousy and envy, it might just mean that you're stopping yourself from being inspired by the people around you. Because, I mean, when you're in a room full of seemingly successful people, it's so easy to get advice. It's so easy to lift yourself up by just talking with them, engaging at their story, seeing where they come from and being inspired by them, rather than being like, oh, they're successful, therefore I'm not, therefore I'll never be, therefore I don't want to be in the same room as them, which is, I mean, it's a painful process.
It is. I totally agree. And I also would say that, like, I think that the most successful people, at least so far that I've met, are more than willing to give you like help or like advice. And the ones that are with the egos are truly just like hurting somewhere else in their life. And it might just like look like they're crushing it on paper or whatever. But that's at least been my experience so far, inside and outside of the music industry, I would say. Because before music, I've had literally every job under the sun. So just dealing with all walks of life.
So did you know you always wanted to go into music though?
Yeah, I've always known. I just didn't know what to do. Like, when I first started, I had zero connections, zero anything. Like, and I grew up poor. So it was just like a double challenge for me. The only thing that I knew I wanted to do was write songs. So that was kind of like my way in, was to like be a studio rat and like hang around and just be like, oh, I'll help you write songs. And I knew how to record myself because I'd been doing that for my artist project. So if anyone needed, like recording or anything like that, I'd always be down to like help. But at the same time, I was working jobs full-time, worked at Starbucks, at like every job you can name I've had. In doing that, you're around what I consider real people. Like, there are people that are going through real life shit. And I think the lack of that, if you're unable to ever relate to, like, if you can't just be around people that are going through real life shit and you're just in this fantasy world of LA, let's say, like, you're just going to start thinking that this is real life, and it's totally not. You'll be very, very, very unhappy.
Little Truman Show thing. I don't know if you know the Truman Show or not.
Love Truman Show. Love the Truman Show.
Revolutionary. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It's really important to experience all walks of life. That being said, like I mentioned earlier, the entertainment industry, so competitive, so difficult to get into. It's networking, connection building, meeting people, working with people, finding out things about yourself, evolving yourself. It's a difficult process. So you mentioned that you grew up poor and you worked every single job, essentially. 2 questions. Did your financial situation ever hinder you achieving your dreams? And let's just start out with that one question for now.
Yeah, I would say 1000% it did. But the thing that was like kind of the blessing was that it taught me how to be so resourceful and learn everything myself. So from the recording to literally graphic design to all of the things that every artist typically has like another team do, or like I learned myself. And those skill sets, which I always say too, music industry is something that everyone wants to be in, and you get paid the least. Like, let's be honest, you're working literally, if you're working on a label, you're probably getting shit pay like immediately off the bat. But those skill sets as artists or musicians that you learn, if you're able to apply it to any other business, like real estate, for example, you're good. Like, you'll be good in terms of salary, right? If we're just talking salary. And literally, that's exactly what I did. I basically took those skill sets and I applied it to, I was working for like a real estate for my initial like first job, but I just like did their graphic design but they treated you so well, and it was like a normal job. And it was like, oh, I don't have to worry about the stresses that come with the music industry or trying to impress anyone, because I don't really care. I don't really want to be here forever. So it was kind of
that's really true. That's true. And I've mentioned it a few times before in other interviews, but like when you know, a lot of people do want to pursue their passions full time. I'm that person. I don't want to work 8 hours a day at a job I don't really like. That being said, the flip side of it is that someone who is working a 9 to 5, that's menial, you know, they're just working a whatever job, and then they come home and dedicate those few hours of the day to their passions, they're not any less successful. That is still pursuing your passions. It's just a different way of pursuing your passions, which
100%.
I was just, honestly, that's something that I just learned, because I've always been told, pursue your dreams, pursue your passions. You know, you never want to work a job that you don't want, but at the same time, you know, what's wrong with that too? So it's really interesting.
There is
take.
nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. And I encourage, I would tell especially new artist, any new creative, you can't compare. Like, some people are just truly born different, like, right tiers, right? Like some people are born rich, some people, and like, it doesn't matter. If you take all of that shit away, what are you going to spend your time doing? And it's like, and that's how I think about it. It's like I know right now there's like a 16-year-old kid living in a mansion, but he has the entire studio, but he doesn't even know how to record himself. Right. So it's like, it's like, those are the things I think about. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you have to do what you have to do to pay the bills and turn what you truly think, at least it's initially a side hustle, until your full-time job, you know, and that's just what it is. And it's going to build so much character, and it's going to weed out all of the pretenders who say they want to do it, because if you're spending all of those waking moments in truly doing it, it's just going to eventually, the tides will turn, and it's like, those people will end up wanting that. They'll just like, they're not as driven, you know, they'll just even, I don't know how to explain that.
No, I mean, that's really inspiring to hear, because my next question was, you know, working all these different jobs while trying to pursue music. Have you ever been discouraged? Especially for me, for example, I want to pursue music, but finding a job is so difficult. So I'm always like battling like this moral dilemma. Do I get a coffee shop job and then pursue whatever I want on the side? Or do I dedicate all this extra time to, you know, finding a job within that industry, so I have a foot in the door while doing my things on the side? So like, that's just like this constant moral dilemma. And it's so easy to get discouraged by it, especially, this is why you get discouraged, but especially when you see your friends and the people around you, you know, working in their fields, working good, great full-time jobs with benefits, jobs that they actually do like, jobs that they want to make into careers. And it's like, that's the thing about the music industry. It's not the same as every other industry. It's different. And it looks quote unquote worse, because, you know, you might have to be a waitress or a waiter. You might have to work at a coffee shop. You might have to work in retail. And it doesn't look, again, I don't believe this, but I know it's like a common sentiment. It doesn't feel as real as those people who do have their full-time jobs in their industry already, you know?
100%. I literally talk about this with every artist. I think like the perks of the music industry is what they try to sell you on, really, right? It's like, oh, we get to go to this show for free. It's like, it's just like it's really interesting. But I think like, 100% have been discouraged. I get discouraged every day now. I think, and that feeling, I don't think will ever stop, right? It's like, you know, when I was 17, all I ever wanted to do was sign a record deal. That was it. And I'd be like, I made it. And then like, you would realize that when that happens, there's so much more work that you have to do to it. And it's like, to stay on the label, like, right. It's like that fear of like, oh, like this funding can be taken away or whatever. I'll get passed up on tours. I'll get passed up on features or things like that, and every day. And even, it's like, even when I try to leverage like the fact that I have written songs for people, it's sometimes not even looked at as I have to just stop like thinking about it as like I just got to work with the people that are already here and expand with them versus like trying to get in with Drake, right? Everyone wants to work with Drake. He has his crew already. He has his, but sorry, going back to the working a job and working in music. The last, the kind of thing that made me realize how nonsensical all of it was that I had been producing music on the side and I'd been working full time at a startup at this point. And a song basically that I had written was taken from me and given basically to the biggest artist in the world while I was working a full-time job. Really could have used getting a publishing deal at that time. I didn't want to work there and all that kind of stuff. And what I say is like, I'm happy that anyone who finds their dream job, like if they think it's their dream job, but there's something different about like knowing exactly what you want to do and it's not paying the bills yet and putting all of that time and energy into that. That I think those people will never understand if they haven't found that yet within themselves. So after that happened to me, I thought that could have changed my life pretty much. And we had to get lawyers involved, all of this sort of thing. And I was like, wow, all of this is just such bullshit. Like that's the vulture game that we're in. We're in this like cutthroat, like people competing for stupid thing. I don't know. I don't know what my point of basically saying that to you was, but it was basically like I get discouraged. Like even when I'm working a job that I in my head is like, oh, I'm on a salary. I'm still getting discouraged by the music industry because I'm working a job, and I'm still getting discouraged by people in the music industry that I know taking something from me that I had made. So it's like nonstop. So it's like you gotta just like, I don't know, ignore it or just like, I don't know.
No, I mean, I wish you could just ignore it, but that's really difficult because, you know, when people take your work just because they can, that's not fair for anyone. That's not even fair for them. I mean, like, that's just shitty. That's a shitty feeling. I think that's a difficult feeling to ignore, especially because you want to be in the music industry and to know that people can just do that. And you probably, I can only assume you probably don't want to do that to other people. So to think that, hey, like, are you going to have to do that if you reach a certain point of success? That's also a scary thought because you don't want to have to do that to other people. And like, I always say this, never overlook the little guys because the little guys can make it so far. They have so much to share. Not that you're a little guy by any means, but like just generally in the music industry, right. Like, well, you're always growing and people have so much knowledge to share, so many things to bring to the table, to the point where other people can feel the need to be like, oh, well, that little guy's smart, but you know, he, she, they are a little person. So I'm going to take whatever I want from them because I can. That's shitty. That sucks. And that's what sucks about the music industry.
And I agree. Like it was a shitty feeling. It is a shitty feeling to have, but I changed my mindset about it thinking I'm flattered. I know I'm dope. I know I'm dope. I know that like there's an insecurity in you that you needed to do that. And like once you start thinking in that way, at least for me, it was like, oh, all right, like I just got to continue. Like everyone's path is different, right? Maybe they found success a little earlier on than me, and like we're able to sort of be in a position to give this song to a big artist or whatever. So whatever. So I just started to change the way I think about situations like that. It was like, it's not, if I'm being the most genuine, truthful person that I know that I am being, and I'm speaking that into existence, and something like that happens still, it's not me. It's not, you know, it's like, we know the truth. Both of us know the truth. It's like when it gets down to the bottom of it, what's going to come out, and time always will tell the side of the story. You know, it's Absolutely. Not going to be.
So did you, you know, when this happened, was it something that I'm just like, I don't know if I can ask this, but I will anyways, and you can not answer if it's like a legality thing. But was it stolen, or did you want to work with them and you didn't get the credit, or what happened there?
So I'd been working with this artist for years, and his first video that blew up, I reached out immediately, and we'd worked over the internet for a while, and yeah, I definitely wanted a placement with him initially, and then he signed to the same management company as an A-list pop star, and basically every quarter I would send beat packs to artists, like rappers. I would just send like, here's an idea, is like just rap on it or whatever, and send one in 2018 to him directly. 2 years later, that A-list pop star releases the song, well, instrumental, basically reproduced in the same exact sort of template, I guess, or like format with the artist I had been wanting to work with as a feature. So it was like almost like a no-brainer. It's like, dude, that's been sitting in your email for 2 years. But I'm at this point, I'm completely over it because number one, like I couldn't at that time, and still now, I wouldn't be able to afford to sue for a song that was not a hit song, but it would have looked really good on the resume. Because shortly after that, my actually biggest placement ended up happening. My publishing deal ended up happening. All of these other things started happening for me, where it's like, I know one day I'll run into that artist, especially being in LA, and I'll be like, bro, it's good. Like, like you're just gonna have, I don't know. That's kind of how I think about it. I was sort of blessed in other ways. And
well, yeah. So do you believe that everything happens for a reason then?
I do. I think it's like I feel like definitely a cliche to say, but I think that even the idea of karma, or just like being good returns, bad return, I think everything in life is just compound interest. So whatever you're working towards, whether that's relationships, whether that's finances, anything, is always just going to accumulate over time. In essence, that would mean that everything does happen for a reason, but it's because you worked at doing it, or like,
yeah. Absolutely. But beyond this situation that you ran into, even though in the long run, it seems like things definitely did work out. It's difficult because I guess you never really know anyone. Like you never really know someone because, you could be working with them for a couple of years, and it's difficult because the music industry, like I said, can sometimes be very selfish, and selfishness could mean not only putting down strangers, but putting down your friends. And that is so wrong, in my opinion, which makes it even more difficult to make friends, to find people that you can trust, to, open up to them, to even share your work or collaborate with them. And that's an anxiety of its own.
Right. Work with your friends. That's what I say. Like, it doesn't matter when money amplifies how someone's personality is going to be. So if you don't know them well enough, when a bag drops onto the table, it's going to just show like who's in it for the right reasons, wrong reasons. And also, you can't treat people like that forever. At some point, you'll ruin enough bridges or whatever to sort of understand that. But one of the biggest things that's so underrated in just the networking aspect of the music industry is to be working with people that you just really think are talented, or you really think are hustling, because they're going to keep you grounded. They're also probably working jobs, and like they're going to work so much harder. I don't know. I just always say work with your friends, because it's I don't know. Because I've been the producer that has been left behind, in quotes, right? Where it's like, all right, these guys blow up and like don't ever work with me again. And I never want to ever treat anyone like that, because I know how horrible that feels. But then at the same time, it's like, as I sort of like navigated this industry, I've seen those same people quit music, or like not. It's because you can't keep doing that and like have a sustainable career.
Absolutely. So, sometimes it sounds like the music industry can be really lonely, unless you work with your friends, of course. But doesn't that make making friends really difficult?
100%. Yeah. It's yeah. I've the only people that I consider truly like my friends here. Well, one is my fiance, and then there's a duo out here called Bygone, and they 5 years ago I cold emailed them, and we did our first session in LA, and we still work to this day. Like they have an artist project, and they opened up my EP release show. It's like those are the sorts of things that I try to instill in the people around me, because I don't really care about the ladder game that everyone's playing.
Yeah, that actually perfectly brings me to my next question. So the higher you get on the ladder, the less of a human you become, the more money you might get, the more fame you might get. Do you think at a certain point, all these, artists who did start at the bottom, who did start, not all of them, obviously, but the artists that did start at the bottom and made their way to the top, do you think that they're still in the music industry and creating music because they love music? Or at that point, is it because that is what they're told to do? That is their life now?
I think it's just a case by case, like, and also how much does that person know who they are? I think that is like where things get sort of like distorted, is like, if you just know who you are before any of it, it's probably not going to affect you in the same ways that it would if you just, went crazy viral on TikTok at 18 years old, and then now all the labels are like, you know what I mean? Like, I think there's just different, everyone is different. So I can't speak on it, to be honest. I can only just speak on, like, for my part, is like, it's been a process, still a process, and like learning who I am and like what triggers me and all that kind of stuff. But I think that I'm glad that anything started happening way after I had real life experience, not just, hit the lottery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like even the slow progression, building your way up and having to go through so many different jobs, meeting so many different people, trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing. I think that, like you said earlier, that really does build character, because you're clearly so resilient. You fall down, you get back up, and you keep trying again because you do love this industry. So with that, what is a milestone that you're most proud of in this industry?
Wow, that's such a great question. I think, I think I guess in the industry you asked specifically, would be just being able to put a project together that I actually feel it was for the first time I put a collection of songs that I can consider cohesive and put it out in the world. But I think outside of like, to me, it's more so outside the industry, if you want me to be honest. I think, like, growing up where I did, no one is able to like get out of that, and not no one, but a lot of people aren't. And I ended up getting my college degree, which was such a big deal for me, because I had to like pay for it out of pocket, and none of my family went to college and all that. And really the only reason I ever did go was because of my mom, really, because like I know how hard she worked, how many jobs she worked just to support us. So those are the things that like matter way more to me than anything that could ever happen in the music industry. I always say this: music industry, anything is just a luxury at this point compared to how I grew up. Like, so I don't really take it as serious as like being there for my brother's birthday or things like that, which I think are really important. The fact that my brother moved here to LA, such a big thing for me, because I wanted him. It's like those are to me my milestones. And also just like getting, I don't know, 1% better each day, right? Like I started going to the gym like a few months ago, and I'm every single day, 5 days a week. Like these are little things about that help me navigate this crazy imaginary LA music world, because it's not real.
No, that sounds, honestly, that's a very healthy mindset. First of all, very humble. But second of all, it's nice that like, it sounds like, your music career revolves around the important parts of your life rather than the important parts of your life revolving around your music career, which is like the center. So the center of your life, it shouldn't ever be your career. And that's honestly, that's a personal struggle for me. I've always been very career based and career driven. And I know that's a very common feeling, but in the grand scheme of things, at the end of the day, what is the most important thing? Like, though your passions are important, who you want to be, what you love, very important, but the relationships that you foster, the people that you meet, the memories that you build that are in the presence of those that you love, that is like, nothing will ever exceed that. And when I say love, of course you can love your fans. I don't think I've met an artist who doesn't love their fans, but there's different versions of love. And I think that at the end of the day, the people that you truly know, the people who have watched you at your weakest, have watched you grow and have stood by you, that is another form of love that is not comparable. So it's really nice that you're making that the center of your life rather than your music career. Which brings me to, your new EP, Garden Statement, a very resonating quote from it. Drove across the country, finally found what I was searching. If I did it all again, then I would never leave New Jersey. Explain that, because that kind of sounds like a regret.
Yeah, it's not a regret. It's more so that I thought that getting a deal and or actually more so getting a real job. I worked a salary job at a startup. Before that, I worked at a hedge fund. And again, like I said, before that, I worked at all these different places from everything you can imagine, because all I cared about was making money, right? Because that's all I cared about when I was like a kid. I had none of it. And not that I really have any now, to be honest. But in that process, I learned that no matter what room you get into, no matter how high, how rich, how whatever, everyone is going through their own struggles. And a lot of those people are, at least my experience has been, they're kind of mean. Like, and I think like it's less about the job itself and more so what they're dealing with, like each individual person. Not all of them are mean, but I don't know, this very macho persona, right? They think Wall Street, right? Like these guys are so like driven, quote unquote. And, I think there's a lot of insecurities that come within, a lot of things that they deal with that they can't face, right? So it's kind of like being in those environments for someone like me, who I was like, man, I thought this would solve everything. That's kind of like where that statement really comes from. It's like moving to LA, getting the deal, getting the whatever, and then saying, wow, I was actually the happiest when I was just a kid playing football on the front lawn and in my neighborhood. Yeah.
So who do you think you would be if music wasn't a part of your life? And, if you could go back, and I don't really believe in going back again, but like, because it sounds regretful, but at the same token, like it does seem to be something that is on your mind. So if you didn't pursue the music industry, is there something else that you think would keep you more fulfilled?
Yeah, I think I would probably do something in video editing or graphic design. I still do those all the time. It would have to be something creative. If I didn't have an outlet for something that was creative, I would probably think, that I would have to go to therapy. But because I have that outlet, I've always had that outlet. I felt like that was my therapy, and it's always just sort of been the only thing I could rely on to get all of my feelings out. Which I say, it's like the music part of the industry is the only thing I take seriously. Like that's the only part of the industry that I will never mess around with, regardless of what anyone thinks. But everything outside of it is just like, it's a luxury. Like it's just.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting though, because I'm curious as to what propels you forward then, knowing how much anxiety the industry gives you, and how mean people can be, and knowing that the music part is the only part that you take seriously. What motivates you to stay within the music industry as a desirable career?
Well, the biggest thing is that I want, 12, 13-year-old me, I want to find him out there. And I want to make sure that he also understands that. Like I want the kids to really understand that like none of it is real. And I want to make sure that like I can sort of at least tell my story, and like hopefully someone that comes from similar situations that I'm from resonate with it. I always say it's like you could listen to my music and not and you can critique all the melodies, you can critique what I'm saying or whatever, but it's the truth, you know? It's like, that's all I'm telling people is the truth. And I think, you know, I discovered my favorite band at 13 years old. It's the reason why I wanted to make music that I discovered The Used. Yeah, I want to be that for someone else. And if I could do that one time, that'd be amazing.
It's funny, I actually, On My Own by The Used is like one of the first songs that I heard in that genre that made me fall in love with like punk, pop punk, rock, like that atmosphere, like the grungier part of music. So definitely resonate with you there. But yeah, I think you said it best. Not everything that glitters is gold, right? I think that is really a difficult lesson to learn. It's really difficult because, you know, you want to make your 13-year-old self proud. And oh my God, that literally makes me want to cry because like, it's true, you know, we grow up like being like, okay, I'm an outcast, you know, I don't really fit in anywhere. And, you know, one day I will be there. And like that, the one day was kind of, for me personally, the only string of hope that I had. The fact that one day will come along and that one day I won't be an outcast anymore and I'll find my place and I'll find who I am, regardless if that's 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now. One day it still exists and it's still in the making. And honestly, that is still a sentiment that keeps me going.
So beautiful.
Thank you. So I definitely understand, you know, wanting to find your 13-year-old self in this chaos and this anarchy and this musical anarchy. So have you had the opportunity to meet your heroes and, you know, like talk with them about their experience?
Yeah, it's been really crazy recently. I've been working with people that I've literally grown up listening to, and I haven't met anyone. I've met one person that was formerly in The Used, but not anyone in The Used. But other, you know, artists, and there's one particular. I'm not going to mention who he is because that's his story to tell. But I grew up very similar to me, and before the session, we just talked for 3 hours, just about like. And I would have never known is the thing, because like his band is like massive and doing all the things, and we really bonded over that. I think that those are the small things that remind me like there are so many more people out there and that go through similar situations. It doesn't even have to be like exactly like you know, poverty or something like that. It could be you know, someone lost a parent very early on. Like that is still so traumatic. That's more traumatic than because my parents are still together, right? So it's like there are things that you can't ever compare. That's why I always say that you can't compare. Like it's we all have that those traumas and all those sorts of things. But there are, I would say my favorite people like that I would say that are the most successful truly are just have had those sorts of struggles to overcome. But like for sure.
The people in the music industry who are mean, you know, chances are they've probably overcome something themselves and they've probably been through something traumatic because, as you know, you and I both know, at the end of the day, to create music, it takes a lot of vulnerability. It takes a lot of understanding what you've been through, and like it's an outlet. You know, you take out your anger onto the paper, onto the guitar, onto the piano, whatever it is. That is where the emotions come into play. So like a song is more than just words and instruments. A song is just like this box of emotions, regardless of whether or not you're a mean person. That being said, of course, I don't like it when people are mean in the music industry, because I think that's like unempathetic. You know, you're not acknowledging that other people are probably going through the same thing as you are, something else, something worse, something better, whatever it is, but everyone's going through something. So it's weird to see like which road people take, you know, being mean to others, or at the end of the day, I guess being mean to themselves sometimes. That's like I read that on Instagram the other day, how when people go through trauma, they go one of two ways, taking it out on the world or taking it out on themselves. And I don't think either one of those is right.
Definitely. Wow. Yeah. And I never heard that before. I think, wow, that's something I got to think about too. Because it's like, it's like, I don't know. I feel like at some point though, right? Like how you have that one day, it's like you understanding that neither of those are going to be true. If there's there's a way to be, there's a way to take that as fuel versus, you know, projecting it on to other people or yourself, where it's like, no, this is just like, now my gas tank's full. Like, and I'm gonna do exactly what I've set out here to do. Really cool thing.
Being at the top, often people think that you got to be cutthroat and, that's the only way to be at the top, but it's not. Oh, anger, fuel. So that's something that it's been a theme in my life. And I think it's been a theme in many people's lives where they use anger as fuel to achieve their goals. But it's only recently that I realized that, when you use anger as a fuel, though it could work out often, I don't know that it's necessarily the healthiest way to achieve something, because again, at the end of the day, you're letting that person who got you angry, that situation that got you angry, to control your success, to have ownership over your success. So for me personally, it doesn't even feel like it's my success when I use my relationships that I'm angry about to get to where I need to be. That's different from, writing like creating a song because you're expressing your anger.
For sure.
But yeah, I don't know that it should be like the base, the foundation of being like, oh, I need to be successful to prove you wrong. But that's such a common thing that we see,
Yeah, it is. And, at the end of the day, it's better on that guitar than someone else.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like, also, I don't know, like for me, I always think about my fuel right now has been basically sort of this accumulation of relationships that I've met throughout my life who I feel like have harmed me or like done me wrong or no longer here, or they resent me because we grew up together and now they decided to stop making music. I try to reach out. They just look at me as like, I don't know, very complex situations, but I basically channel all that into a person, like an imaginary person. And that's sort of that's my sort of, so if that person, which is multiple people, control what ends up happening in music or songs or whatever, it's better that I talk about it in the open versus, like I said, channeling that negative energy elsewhere onto someone else. I'd rather it just be, it's out of me. That's how I think about it. It's out of me. It's not in me. I'm not keeping it in. That's what's keep me so level-headed. And it's like, all right, like these things are going to happen. They're not going to stop. Like people you think are your friends, and especially as you're doing things, and it's very hard to explain for me sometimes because I just don't. I used to think like, why would that person ever stop talking to like me or something? But I fucking get it more than ever now. Like as you move throughout the industry, the conversations that are had without you there about you come back to you, and like it's just I'm like, what? Like I fucking grew up with you, dude. Like these are lies. Like, it's like very, very that was like, that's the hardest thing for me to take as I've done anything in this industry, or the relationships that I initially had, like being in bands with people who ended up just quitting music or just like not pursuing it, or like not teaching themselves how to record or write and all that kind of stuff. And like they see this kid who like me clearly, who just never stopped, and I don't ever stop. I think that's just been instilled in me, just like to keep going. And seeing the way that my relationships have been like torn because of that. Very, very weird. But everyone outside of the music industry I'm on great terms with. So it's just this weird competition thing that like happens.
really weird, because I say it all the time. I think that the arts, music, film, entertainment industry, there's literally enough space for everyone to be successful, in my opinion.
Yes.
They're like, no two people are the same. Everyone's like, a snowflake. Like there's just enough room. No one's better than the other. Someone with 3 listens on Spotify is just as talented as like Ariana Grande or whatever the hell, because you can't compare the two. Everyone has their own thing. It's just one is discovered and the other one isn't yet. And that that doesn't really go hand in hand with success or talent or being good or whatever. But throughout your journey, you know, has it become really difficult to trust people? Do you ever see yourself having a problem with trust?
I think I mean, if I'm thinking about it, probably yes. I definitely am hesitant. I mean, I am in like a spot, right? I'm in LA, so it's like just in general, like I don't like it's just like you know what you're getting into kind of thing. So I definitely have my guard up a lot of the time. Um, I think I have a problem with with being with letting people in too early.
Mm.
I think that's kind of like my downfall of being in LA is that I feel like I'm for the most part an open book on anything that anyone asks me, and I think sometimes people collect that information and somehow store it to use it against you in some sort of way and take it out of context. Or I think that's something I've really been struggling with being here. But the people that are closest to me, they know me, so they're like, Nick would never fucking do that or say that ever. Like it's like those sorts of scenarios I find myself in. And also I've only been here 3 years.
Yeah.
You know?
And you're
and it's
so
like,
young.
Thank you. I'm 31. I don't feel like I'm that young, but
No. Okay, actually, this is a topic that my friends and I talked about not long ago. You know, growing up, we think 30 is so old or whatever. It's not. 30 is really young. You still got a lot ahead of you. Don't you worry. But yeah, I think that many of the people that are in my circle, as well as myself, we all wear our hearts on our sleeves. And, you know, when you do that, you're prone to getting hurt easily. You're prone to, you know, people taking advantage of you and all. So that's actually a thought that's been on my mind recently. You know, is it good to wear your heart on the sleeve, or is it bad? Is it worth it? Is it not? Like, especially if it comes naturally, if it's a part of who you are, then, you know, my thought is, of course, keep doing it. Like, that's a beautiful thing. That's a very strong thing to be able to do. But by that same token, you know, the self-protective side of me is like, no, but why would you do that? Because not everyone deserves your heart. So what are your thoughts on that?
that's again a beautiful quote from Angie. Crazy. Um, but I think I personally think that if you are someone who just keeps your emotions on your sleeve and you are very open and again super honest, then you're gonna take some L's on the chin as long as you come back up. But at the same time, you're gonna basically create or cultivate this sort of world around you of people that are in the same headspace and who are being that with you. So you can kind of weed out people in the same way, right? It's like, all right, the cost of me being open was losing someone who truly doesn't even deserve to be in my life. So it's kind of like, that's kind of how I've been thinking about it recently. So, because I feel like a lot of the times, again, if you're telling the truth, and people, if there's uncomfortability in the truth, right? So when someone doesn't want to open up, or like when it makes them feel sort of like insecure about it, it's because it's tapping into something that is partly true. Like, so I think that the more defensive or like you're unable to talk about that, you understand that about yourself, right? Where it's like, if you know what I'm trying to say, it's kind of like
I do.
There's, yeah. So the people that want to hide that stuff are just gonna project that into their relationship.
What I'm also gathering from what you're saying is that the inevitable kind of comes with time. So if you're not wearing your heart on your sleeve and if you are more guarded, that's totally okay as well. And you meet people who are the same way, eventually the truth will come out. And if they're a shitty person and undeserving of your heart, they're still going to end up leaving, or you're still going to end up leaving. So I guess, yeah, wearing your heart on your sleeve does kind of weed the people in and out a little bit faster. And you kind of do figure out who's going to stay and who's going to go, even though that does mean you might fall down a little bit more often, a little bit more times. And but with that, you build resilience as well. Falling down is not a bad thing. That's a great thing. You don't build resilience without falling down.
100%. Yes.
Oh yeah.
That's the cost that I'm willing to pay that every time.
That's a difficult thing to say though. That's so great. Easier said than done, obviously. And that takes a lot of strength to do, because it is so easy to be like, you know what, screw this. I'm going to be shielded. I'm going to be guarded. No one deserves me. Honestly, that could be the very sentiment that people at the top of the ladder might feel. There's like so many people that know them, so many people who aren't real to them. They might not know what to do other than guard themselves. And that might come off as mean. Unless they are just downright mean. So that just sucks. And people
That's
are
very
downright
true.
mean.
Very true.
Yeah. Throughout your journey though, you mentioned that you don't stop. You like to keep going. You're a go-getter. I feel you. That's really difficult. Entertainment industry is difficult. Not much money, imposter syndrome, whatever else you might be going through. And in my experience, it also does hinder a lot of, my feelings of anxiety. It does bring up depression again, especially because you build communities of people who are depressed and all of a sudden you're depressed with them. So, which is bittersweet, but rest is so important.
Recovery.
Rest and recovery. Yeah. Recharging. How do you rest if you feel the urge to keep going?
I try to do things that have nothing to do with music. I love skating. I have to make sure I go to the gym every day now, every single day for the most part. Because there's like there's like a rush to my head that says if I can just survive this, then nothing will matter today. If you're like, that's how hard I try to go in that. And I don't know, that's like this, it might be weird to say, but that's just how I think. I just need to get that release from that. But yeah, doing things outside of music. I just sometimes don't even want to talk about music, or like I talk to my mom, FaceTime. She just talks to me about all these shows she's watching, and I have not watched one, but I just love hearing her just go on about them. Just because like I don't know. It's just like it's those sorts of things that just get your mind off of it. I wish I could say I meditate or anything like that, but really I find myself a lot of times just like being bored, but really I'm just content, right? Like I'm just like happy to just be with my dogs on the couch. Like I think like those are the little moments that you don't think about in the time. I actually just wrote a song about that yesterday. I'm crazy.
Oh.
Literally just yesterday. I was like so happy to show people. I was like, oh my God, I think I got one today. But yeah, it's like those small moments that learn to appreciate those moments.
Yeah, definitely.
What about
in terms of how do I rest?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm still struggling with that. I just don't. So burnout
So
is like
hard.
a very, very common thing for me, anxiety, and it's difficult. And, like pushing myself and forcing myself, because when I'm resting, I still feel restless because I'm not doing something. So it's still difficult. I don't really watch TV. I like to cook with my friend. That's something that like
Great.
I, turn to. But I was going to mention escapism, and going to the gym is a huge form of escaping. So a little bit about myself. It's something that I'm quite open about now, but a couple of years ago, so I deal with eating disorders, and a couple of years ago, I really hit the gym, and I started going to the gym every single day for like 5 hours at a time. And it seemed healthy. It looked healthy. You're going to the gym, so no one could say it's unhealthy. And I like really, really got so consumed with it. And that is a form of purging.
Wow.
Just like generally anything, people who are depressed often turn to sleeping as their form of escapism, and oversleeping also not a great practice. So anything that you overdo, even though it might seem seemingly healthy, is not necessarily, because if you're constantly escaping, you're not living in this moment anymore. And I think that, sometimes it's a scary thought, because I love writing music, I love creating music, but sometimes even escaping into music can be dangerous, because you're no longer living in your moment. You're living in this musical realm where you're reliving your traumas or living in a fantasy future and whatever else. And you're constantly turning to music 24/7 because you don't want to face this moment in this current life. So escapism is a tricky topic for me because it's difficult. That line is so easily blurred,
Yeah, you're right. And I think, I think like the only way to truly, right, if you're gonna talk about escapism in that way, then it's like the only real thing to be able to do is to sit with your thoughts and be okay with it. And it's like, if and that's why I used to meditate. I don't meditate anymore, really. But if you can just have a calm mind, then you don't need to escape. But I think that, let's say for our personality types, we always just feel like we need to be doing something, or we're not being productive, or we're not advancing our career, or we're not. There's like this famous quote about like Warren Buffett, like he obviously crazy investor, billionaire, and he still drinks like a Coke every day or something, like multiple Cokes every day. And people are like, it's so bad for you. And it's like, that's his form of like rest. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's better than doing like a hard drug or something, you know what I'm trying to say? So it's I think like, I don't know, I think it's finding whatever that is for every person. And it might be, I don't know, something to think about, right? Like I suck at skating, but like I feel I don't have any worries when I'm by myself at this random parking lot skating. I'm like, I don't have to think about anybody or anything. Sometimes escapism is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like really important for people to have an outlet to escape to. And I mean, you love learning. So it sounds like, when you're not really good at skating, it's something that you feel propelled to learn just because you like learning. But that being said, in terms of rest, I think that one big, and this kind of circles back around to an earlier topic that we were talking about in terms of relationships and anger. So one way in which I'm restless is because I am very career driven, and, I really have my goals, and I think goals are overrated. Okay. Have your goals, but like when they become the center of your life, that's just not good anymore. And I know that because that is what happened to me. So, make your goals, don't make them your entire life. So,
I'm with you.
Yeah. But I realized that, this drive for success came out of anger with a person in my life. And I kept on telling myself, you know what, like, I'm not going to do this to prove him wrong. I'm not going to do this because out of anger or anything. In my core, I still was. So it wasn't until I had to confront that person and, go over all the nitty gritty, ugly feelings, tell them how I felt, tell them, this is what happened. Like, let's talk about this. What did you mean and stuff? And whether or not the outcome was good of that conversation, I think that allowed me to just recently. So this happened like several weeks ago, but that confrontation, thank you. That confrontation is what allowed me to rest. So circling back to your conversation about channeling this anger into this imaginary person, I'm curious if you're able to confront this imaginary person through your music, and if that'll give you that same sense of letting it go.
I would say yes, like right off the bat. I'm able to sort of, I don't know, I think like relationships are very complex. Like it's like one of those things where sometimes you feel like you didn't do anything wrong, they feel like they didn't do anything wrong, and just there's people outgrow each other, right? It's kind of one of those things that I've also just learned that just happens. Like people just gravitate to other sorts of groups or common interests and all those sorts of things, and you're like, oh, why isn't my friend talking to me anymore as much, or those texts come from every week to every month, and so on. So yeah, it's just like, I feel like by being able to have someone to confront, right? I'm able to say exactly what I think in that moment through the song, and then it's over. And then it's like, okay, like I've got that off my chest.
Yeah. It's kind of like writing a letter to an imaginary person and then tearing that letter up.
Yes, exactly. Or writing an angry email and then erasing it and saying, sure, I'll do that.
I think that's a great part. Again, even whatever allows you to, if it's not out, it's in. So whatever allows you to let those emotions go and leave them in the past. I think it's different for everyone, but whatever it is, it's a great practice. So before we wrap up, though, I do want to talk about Before the Internet a little bit more, because it's, I don't know, I love all the songs from it, and each one of them just like hits home every single time. So I would love to hear, why did you call it Before the Internet, and what was going through, like, how did you write this music? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, so obviously as like the TikTok era has like kind of like taken control of the industry at this point. But I feel like it hasn't. It's the now, right? Like there was Vine, there was MySpace, there's all of these different things. And I think that what has been sort of like alarming to me is that I remember on MySpace being a teenager, and I would see someone with 10,000 friends and I'd be like, they are rich and famous, and like I can't believe it. Like, and you don't necessarily know. There was like social media was like pretty new. So you just thought everyone was killing it. And I think that is for some reason alarming to me, because it's still that way in the TikTok game. And I think these kids are growing up with the TikTok influencers, and they're thinking like a lot of them are crushing it. Don't get me wrong. But it's not as many as you would think. And there's all these other factors, right? Like how people grow up and all that kind of stuff that kind of will mess with you. So the only thing about, I guess like before the internet, I wasn't really talking about the internet at all. Like I was basically trying to just chase the feelings of how I did before we were all expected to sort of become these brands, media companies, and all these content. We're all supposed to be a media company. We're like people.
Yeah.
Like what? Like
constantly selling ourselves.
Just like so ridiculous, and like not just like, yeah. So that's basically what I wrote it about.
That's really cool. And like, honestly, I don't really remember a time before the internet. I remember Vine. I remember MySpace. I have two older sisters. I'm 23. So MySpace was kind of dying off by the time I came around to it. But,
Yeah.
I remember my first iPod shuffle and downloading songs from like LimeWire and stuff. I don't think that the world has ever been so in the internet as they are now, even though the internet existed and there was still those social media outlets. So it's weird that now we kind of are so dependent on it. I'm curious as to where we cross that line. Like, why did we become so addicted to the internet, knowing that there was still social media before, there was still all these different websites to visit. I remember coming home from school every day and talking to my friends on MSN. Like,
yep.
But even then, even talking to my friends on MSN, it wasn't like it was now. We still see each other all the time. So,
and you hit it on the head. It's like more so about, it's not necessarily, the project isn't about the internet really. It's about having those emotions and real conversations with the people. Like I always say, it's like discovering your favorite band for the first time is literally a high that you can never replace, right?
That's so
or
beautiful.
making a new friend, like a high you can never replace. And that's literally all I was chasing writing those songs, was like, is it giving me that feeling of, I have the Used tatted on my arm.
Oh, nice.
Because it's the only band that got me into all of this stuff. So it's the internet's here. It's always going to be here. I just think that I do, and you remember a time too, not necessarily before I'll say the TikTok era, of connecting. And I think everyone will always go through that. It's not like internet is so bad. There's a ton of good things that come from the internet too, but it's just I think the internet distracts us from like all of the good, like interactions and real life things that people go through.
Yeah. And I think your album, you said it so beautifully, discovering a new band or a new song, or, making a new friend, a long-term friend, or like meeting someone that you just know your soul was meant to cross paths with. Like, those are all such beautiful feelings that the internet cannot ever steal. Literally, no matter how consumed we are, that will never be taken away.
Never.
I think that to put that feeling into music, I mean, I just already know that when people listen to that song, you'll recreate that feeling for them, because they're going to be like, oh my God, like I discovered a song that I really like, that I really resonate with. It's like meeting a new friend. It's like making a new connection, because music is so vulnerable. So you're constantly making connections with people you don't even know. I mean, look at the connection that you built with the Used, and you didn't even know them. And you built such a strong, vulnerable, deep connection without even ever having to talk to them. I think that is so beautiful about music.
And you can't replace it. Yeah, it's yeah, you hit it on the head. I don't know, like it gives me goosebumps thinking about it, because it's like that's what life's about, chasing those feelings.
Yeah. And I think that it sucks when you're too consumed with internet and you're scrolling through TikTok 8 hours a day. In that case, I mean, I would highly recommend that you put the phone down, but easier said than done, of course. Our mental health consumes us, especially during a pandemic. That was like really hard. But that being said, nothing will replace those feelings. And pushing yourself to get out of bed, get off your phone, those feelings are always going to be worth it. But yeah. So is there anything else that you would like to mention? Anything that your fans that are listening to this, is there anything that they should know before we wrap up?
I'm probably the worst at these things, but I just wanted to tell you, thank you so much for taking the time, reaching out. And I love everything that you're doing and what you're about. Keep going. For anyone listening, I think that the only thing I could really say is just like, continue to find who you are and be that in the world and not anything else.
Beautiful. Being authentic is difficult, but it's worth it. Being
Agreed.
yourself. Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for being here. I really love the insights that you had to share. I can't wait to see where else you go. And I hope that I get to re-interview you one day and see your progress.
Would absolutely love that. And you gotta come to the show.
Oh my God. Yeah. I literally would. Concerts take all my money. It's so bad. Like I will be broke for concerts, because it's just like feeling the music in your veins. Nothing
I'm the same way.
To it.
Same exact way.
Yeah. I mean, I live in Toronto, but if you're ever into Toronto, I will gladly come out and support you. I would love to.
Would love for you to be there.
Sounds good. All right. Have a really good day. Okay.
You too. I'll see you.
Bye.